like anybody else. The military, like all branches, they love paperwork. So somebody must have pressed the wrong number, wrong name, who knows what, and there goes this letter to my dad that I had been killed in action through a letter. I used to write to all my sisters. I have this album I bought in my second base camp, Kuchi. It's a little photo album, and I have all these pictures in there that my sisters would send me, And these guys would see these pictures. One of my sisters, she's kind of a sexy pose, and they said, "Man, you got a lot of girlfriends." I go, No. These are my sisters, not my girlfriends,
Made you feel good about someone connecting back home. You were half the world away in a foreign country and in a war situation. And to have a letter was very important to receive the care and the love and the letters that people expressed, and particularly your parents, of course.
Well, we exchanged letters. I mostly wrote to my mother, but I did write to a couple of girls. In fact, one of the ironic ones, I only knew her for a very short time, and I think I was over there maybe a month, and I asked her to marry me. Talk about being lonely.
Very large support group. Very large support group. My wife, certainly, I was married at the time, wrote me constantly. I wasn't at a loss for receiving a letter, which was very important.
Whether or not we write at home and all that, I didn't that much because I thought I had a job to do when I was in the service, and I didn't want I'm the kind of individual, I don't want anything to get in my way of my feelings and anything that might endanger not only myself, but my crew that I worked with.
There was some kind of effort, an operation or something here in the United States to support, even though there was a lot of negativity about the war, there were some people who supported us and who tried to communicate with us and support us by letter writing. There was also a family that I recall that wrote to me, and they sent me a green scapular that I carried for many years after that.
He says, "Hey, Gomez." I go, "What?" "Come over to the section tonight." I said, "What for?" He says, "Just come on over." So I went over to the section. He had gotten what we call a care package from home, In this care package, he had tortillas, he had menudo, cans of menudo, beans. I don't know what else he had in there, But man, we partied like we were back home. We had our beer and we had these goodies from back home, and we partied with me for that short time. We were back home.
Oatmeal, Quaker Oats oatmeal, which wasn't something that you received. I would get packages of that. She would sneak a bottle of my favorite liquor inside the box of oatmeal. So I was very popular when only second popular to the guys that received drugs from overseas. So that
you're in a war that maybe you had no idea why you should be there, or you fight for freedom of these people, but to get a letter and to read about, hey, my sister went to this picnic and or she went to a dance, or maybe I have a new cousin in the family, or someone, one of my sisters maybe had another baby or something like that. It was great news to enlighten your spirits, in other words,
I was over there. We had a lot of black kids, and for some reason I got drawn into their group, and we'd sing slave songs, and they would get me in with the booms and whatever at the very end, and I do remember that, and but I also remember that one of the guys had a recorder, cassette recorder, and we'd get music that way, and everybody would gather around, but it only lasted as long as the batteries lasted.
I never really had time to listen to music, not even in base camp, because when we were in base camp, even then we would get lessons. We'd be getting lessons, But
unified us, quite frankly. At the time that I was there, the radio stations, AFVN, I think it was called, whatever, Armed Forces Radio. But they were playing more contemporary music, more rock, Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and anything that was popular at that particular time, right? Motown kind of music. Music was very important. A lot of us carried transistor radios, and you had to make sure that certainly they were off at certain times and that you had earphones if you were going to listen to them. You know, there were certain groups of us that liked certain songs. Motown, as I said before, was a big one.
R&B, you know, Temptations, the Miracles, and, you know, a little bit of CCR and, you know, Chicago, music like that, you know, just some slow, some fast music, you know, just, you know, kind of pass the time away a little bit. Seemed to calm my nerves, you know, because I think every veterans that served overseas in wartime is a little bit nervous, and they needed something to comfort them, to remind them a little bit of home, not too much, but just music that they like in particular.
And we just started trios, quartets, and a good way of deloading a lot of that stress, just kind of forgetting where you were for a particular period of time. And yeah, so music was big, very big, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, we'd go to the movies. Sometimes you could, they'd be fairly close to where we stand guard too. Although that's, you know, you couldn't be watching the movies.
I watch a lot of the old documentaries of Vietnam. A lot of the movies that you see on TV as far as Vietnam, some is fairly realistic, some is just a lot of Hollywood. It's entertaining.
Yeah, before I went over, the Green Berets and some of these Hollywood told too clean, too sterile a story. Even some of the movies that came out when I got back, the uniforms weren't dirty enough. They were still too green, and you know, that green on the uniform or on my helmet, you know, was the dirt got on there after a while, and nothing was green anymore. But some of these movies, but there's been some that as they've gotten more real, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Movies like Platoon was one that I think was pretty close to what it was like.
Sometimes movies glamorize war, and or they go the other way and they're very brutal, particularly today's movies. War is not a beautiful thing. It's not a beautiful experience. The only thing beautiful about it is if you're doing something to help people free themselves from tyranny. But the cost to both sides is tremendous.
Hamburger Hill is another one that, if you ever see the movie, you know, these guys are going up this hill. It's bad enough when it's not raining, but when it's raining and the monsoon would hit, I mean, mud is coming down, water's coming down, plus bullets are coming at you, grenades are coming at you. It was no picnic, you know, and I always felt, why in the hell did we do this? You know, why couldn't they have just leveled that with B-52s or F-15s with their napalm in something, or instead of sending our guys to get killed like that for some damn hill that then later we leave and they come back and take it right back.
Now, now when I see some of them, you do a comparison, and like I said, you know, is that really the way it was, or, you know, and I don't truly think they've written a movie that can tell you exactly like it was. A lot of times people won't believe that. You have to doctor some things up to make the, because otherwise some of it gets pretty dull for people, I guess. You know, you have to understand there was down days and exciting days.
I think it's history. And it's one thing I enjoy is learning about the past so that we don't repeat it again. But somehow we will. I don't know how, but somehow history will repeat itself.
Also, when I was in Vietnam, there was an orphanage down the road from where our base was at. It was run by French nuns. They were sadly understaffed. They had babies, a lot of babies, and they just needed supplies. We went there to give them some supplies, and we spent some time there holding the kids, playing with the little ones. It was a sad situation. The saddest part was there was a lot of the building was pockmarked with bullet holes all over from the war, and primarily from the Viet Cong. doing something to help the little ones and the people that were there in the orphanage that took care of them. I don't know that I thought much about afterwards because of the different things involved with their duties and responsibilities in the military. But I find that as life goes on, I reflect back on those type of things, and I find that it did have an impact on me in who I am as a person and the things that I do today.
A veterans organization in we worked in Anaheim, but it was an Orange County effort. It was me and there were 6 other veterans, most of us from Vietnam, some from more current wars, the Iraq War and so forth. And we were asked to kind of relate different aspects of our experiences, and the director put all that together, and we performed that twice in front of a live audience. So I took little bits and pieces of what I had written and then kind of stuck with a theme that she was kind of working on with the whole group. And yeah, I've taken my experience, my war experience or combat experience, kind of turned it into a solo performance that I need to kind of flesh out some things. I've added some of the music aspect into it. You know, some of these artists that I've met or writers that I've met have 5, 6, 7 drafts of something, and even when they think they have it to a point where they're testing it out with an audience, they'll still take it back and rework it. So I've just been working at this for 3 years, so you know, I figure I got a little ways to go, but yeah.
Art, music, and a variety of other things. And I find that all of these things, they're not separate items, they're all integrated into our whole humanity to help people heal from the experiences they've had in wartime. I'm all for promoting those arts and anything that will help people become more whole, better people for themselves. And that includes a lot of different things. It includes the martial arts. It includes, like I was explaining earlier, about a man who's helping veterans heal after their experiences, and particularly wounded war veterans, by helping them to learn to ride horses.
When I was working, my wife and we went to a meeting. I think it was Pico Rivera or Monte, somewhere over there, one of the libraries or something. What I saw in there was eye-opening for me, and it was a whole bunch of pictures, like on a wall or something, maybe a dozen pictures or more, and all Mexican men and maybe some women, I'm not sure, but all Medal of Honor winners that you don't hear about. I don't know about in schools nowadays what they're teaching them, but I never heard about these, Mexican people or men that were Medal of Honor winners. I mean, we didn't get the respect we should have got when we came home, whether you were black, white, or Mexican, and I just, I know when I see another veteran, whether he's white, Mexican, or whatever, I go shake their hands and I tell them thank you for their service, I don't know if one race more than the other, say the Mexican people did more than, say, any other race. I know it's just that if we did our job, and we did, I think, as Mexican people, and we served our country, this is my country, I was born here, and in a heartbeat, if I had to, I'd go back again.
Well, I think if my statistics are correct, as if you look at the Latino community in California, has one of the highest rates of Latinos that served in Vietnam. Also, I believe it has one of the highest awards that were given to Vietnam veterans from California and the Latino population. Whether they be Latino, black, Chinese, it doesn't make any difference. They did serve their country. And the Latinos that I know have served their country and served it quite well.
And all of a sudden these cars come by and they're beeping the horn at me and using every profanity they can think of. They made me feel like I was a piece of dirt, like nothing, and I just, of course, somebody's gonna get mad. Baby killer was the least of my worries about what they say, but they were just like dirt. So I wasn't very well welcomed coming home, so it was pretty traumatic for me to come home like that.
For the longest period of time, I didn't talk about what I did. People used to be surprised. This is way back when I got home, middle 70s, late 70s, when people would find out I was a Vietnam veteran. They, oh, you don't act like a Vietnam veteran. And I always kind of, maybe that's why I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what that meant. What was I supposed to act like? Was I supposed to come low crawling into rooms for meetings and stuff? Or I didn't quite get it. So maybe that's why I never said anything. But that was always an odd response when I didn't offer it. It would come into a conversation, but people would, oh yeah, you don't act like, or seeing that was all part of some of that early Hollywood stuff. I think that made us all look like, kind of crazies and so forth. Not that we weren't, but not everybody was.
There were a lot of Latinos that served in the Vietnam War, as in all our wars, and they deserve to be recognized for their service. And they should stand proud for their service to our country and their community. And they are no better, no worse than any other segment of our population. A friend of mine used to say that we came over on different ships to this country, but we're now all in the same boat. And regardless of where our people come from in the world, we're all Americans as long as we pledge allegiance to the red, white, and blue. So I'm for all of us standing together, whether you're brown, white, black, yellow, whatever, we're all Americans.
Well, I think it's interesting because my mother and father actually met because of the war. There was a magazine that encouraged people to write, and my mom wrote a letter, a random letter, and my dad received the letter, and it just so happened that they lived close to each other. My dad lived in Pico Rivera, California, and my mom lived in La Puente, California, and my dad received my mom's letter. And he made a connection with my mom upon his return. And that's what started our family, if you will.
I always waited for those letters, and I always tried to read what he wasn't saying. I understood when he was saying that he was busy. He was a combat soldier, so I knew he must have been fighting war, right? The letters came full of clay. Sometimes I wouldn't get letters for maybe, I could count on a letter a week. One time I went like 9 days, and then I got 4 letters. Frankly, I thought if I got 1 letter a month from him, it was going to be more than enough, because he was a man of few words stateside. And I was surprised at how the writing happened. And before July came, he was going to have an R&R, which meant that I could meet him in Hawaii. I bought him a tape recorder, and I sent him a tape of my voice because I forgot what he sounded like, and I sent him black tapes, and I think I sent him a tape of music, and I would send him pictures.
There was advertisements to write to people, and I chose to do that, so I wrote to a young man that was in the Air Force. Then my godmother and godfather's son, who graduated the same year I did, which was in '66, joined the Army, and so I wrote to him. Then my sister's godmother, her son, who I went to junior high school with, and he was in the Army, I wrote to him. So I was in essence writing to 3 different people and experiencing Vietnam through their eyes, which was entirely different. Entirely different.
The man that goes never comes back. It's a different person. That healing happens if you're willing to be courageous enough to work it out. That it's part of you forever. It's in the shadows. It's never really gone. And at any moment it could surface.
Growing up the way that I did, knowing about the Vietnam War through the experience of my father and my uncle and others, and
just the political time that I grew up in. I think it all sort of played a role in shaping the way that I think about politics and about war. I'm always very conscious of the fact that war has a cost for those who don't survive it, but also those who do. And it's a cost that lasts a long period of time.
My grandfather, both my grandfathers served in the military, and my dad did, and it seemed almost like a common thing for young men to do. I know my father-in-law as well served in the military, and his compadres served in the military. That was kind of a natural progression in my community growing up, is you would go to school and then you would either go get a job or you go to the military. And it was different in terms of not really going to college right after high school. It was more service oriented, where we went to the military or we went to work.
And so I've experienced Vietnam through him. And what he's told me about what he did in Vietnam, the PTSD has come through by virtue, it's come through more because of the fact that he's retired. So now he's thinking about it. So there you are seeing movies all about the war and everything. And just like when my dad was World War II, and then now my husband's watching movies, so it was no different other than my husband. If the movie got to him, I would see my husband cry. And that was an experience that I didn't have with my dad, because Dad didn't cry at watching the World War II movies with John Wayne. You know, this was a whole different experience. He was experiencing what happened there, and he also had regret for not going back.
We are a people of honor. I believe when in the draft, what I saw I'm looking back on all the young men I knew that were my friends in the neighborhood where I was living, that they're very patriotic, that we go back generations. Some people go way back to always been here since Mexico. People don't understand that, and they don't understand how patriotic even immigrants are. My parents were very, very patriotic about being in this country. My father especially, because he had 4 daughters, and he just felt opportunities were greater here. I believe that not only are we very courageous, we take honor and we take our word very seriously. That's part of our culture.
So I carry a lot of pride for the things that my father has gone through, but in the way that I think about it, often has a lot more. I have a lot more pride for him and what he's done in his life since coming back from being an infantryman in Vietnam. I have a great amount of pride for kind of how he has survived war in the years since coming back from it, and what he's managed to do to build a healthy, family that's all grown up and successful in their own ways.
I bleed red, white, and blue because of my family background. My dad was World War II. My uncles were World War II. I had an uncle killed in Korea. And then here my husband serves in Vietnam. And so veterans, I respect them. And I know the newer generation. But our kids in school have to be taught what it is for veterans and what they experience.
This Vietnam generation was the last generation to not have a choice for a lot of them. While many enlisted, many were also drafted and had no other choice but to serve. And those of us who grew up in a totally different kind of framework where it's all about our choice, I think there's even a greater distance for a lot of this generation and the ones since, because they can't ever imagine themselves inside of that role. And that, again, it makes it scary and mysterious and unknown to them.
I think we need to go back and start telling our kids about, the experiences of the veterans that came over and what they experienced, and those now that experience the negativity, like the Vietnam vets, the new soldier is not getting that because the veterans from Vietnam paved the way, even though they're the ones that got spit on, they're the ones that got called names and everything, and they're experiencing it. But now some of those are legislators so that they can now say, hey, we're not having this to the rest of the guys that are over there serving. It's not going to happen again. And that's what we need to teach our kids. Some of the things that you have were because of sweat and blood. And you can do that through, if you can find part of your history as far as the letters that maybe your mom and dad wrote, or an aunt or uncle wrote to a soldier, or a lover did, that you can share those with people.
One of the important things to know about Latinos in Vietnam is that our stories need to be told, right? These stories are important. I've asked some veterans to share their story, and some are reluctant. Many think that my story is not important, right? I was just a truck driver. I was just an infantryman. But I think it's important to realize that those stories are important for our history, and our history in general, Latino history and American history.